the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners, and it is now 9:03 a.m. on October 13th, 2022. I am calling to order the special meeting of the board. The process we are using for today's meeting is authorized by Government Code Section 54953, which was added by Assembly Bill 361. This allows the Housing Commission to use teleconferencing and to provide the public with an opportunity to address the board through a call-in or internet-based option during a proclaimed state of emergency. The San Diego City Council on September 13th, 2022, and again on Tuesday of this week, October 11th, declared that a state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of members to meet safely in person. The council also declared that this applies to all boards, commissions, and committees for the city of San Diego. Today, the special meeting is occurring by video conference with most of our board members, our interim president and CEO, housing commission staff, and general counsel participating by video. For the record, I will ask each board member to indicate your presence as I say your name. Vice Chair Ryan Klumpner.
Here.
Commissioner Stephanie Benvenuto. Commissioner Joanna Hester.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly Hubbard. Commissioner Melinda Vasquez. Okay, let the record reflect the present and not present. No members of the public are in attendance. However, members of the public may watch the video conference and hear the audio of today's meeting, which is being streamed live online. The agenda for today's meeting includes a link to the website for the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners, where the public can access the live streaming for today's meetings. The public has been provided with an alternate opportunity to provide comments to the board through an online comment form and a toll-free phone number. A link to the online comment form was included on the agenda for today's special meeting, which was posted on the San Diego Housing Commission website at www.sdhc.org on October 5th. A revised agenda was posted on the website on October 10th to add an item 103, which will be an informational workshop for today's meeting. The agenda and the public comment form explain that comments about items on the agenda will be read into the record, and if they are submitted by 4 p.m. on yesterday, October 12th. Non-agenda public comments submitted by 8 o'clock this morning will be read into the record. In addition, members of the public who wish to listen to today's meeting by phone and speak on an item may call the toll-free phone number that is included on the agenda. Today, we are starting to use a slightly different process than we have in the past for public comments by phone. The toll-free number is 833-548-0276. Once again, 833-548-0276. When prompted, callers should enter the meeting ID number provided on the agenda, which is 927-5550-5703. A participant ID number is not required. Just press pound. Again, a participant ID number is not required. Just press pound. Members of the public will remain muted until they are called upon to speak. When the comment period for the non-agenda public comment or an agenda item is introduced, those who wish to speak should press star 9 on their phone to raise their hand. Staff will inform callers when it is their turn to speak. When that occurs, the caller will need to press star 6 to unmute themselves. I'm going to repeat that. You will need to press star 6 to unmute yourself when called upon. If a caller begins to comment on an item that is different from the item currently being considered, they will be muted and asked to raise their hand at the correct time. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments. However, if a large number of callers wishes to speak on a single agenda item, comments will be limited to 1 minute each. Members of the public may also watch video of today's meeting through the live video streaming available through the Housing Commission website, www.sdhc.org. Today's agenda, including a link to the website for this board, today's agenda included a link to the website for this board where the public can access the live stream for today's meeting. Non-agenda public comments. We're gonna proceed with non-agenda public comments, and then I think based on the fact that we are missing a quorum, I'm going to ask Interim Chairman Jeff Davis if we can start with the educational item first, on which I think is a very important discussion, the workshop on vouchers. But before we get there, let's get to the non-agenda public comments. As I mentioned, the phone line for today's meeting is 833-548-0276. Callers who wish to provide non-agenda public comments should press star 9 to raise their hands. This is the time when members of the public may provide comments to the Housing Commission Board about topics that are not on today's agenda, but involve a subject within the Housing Commission's area of responsibility. The Housing Commission cannot take an action on non-agenda public comments. We did not receive any written non-agenda public comments for today's meeting, but I will now ask our Vice President of Communications, Scott Marshall. Scott, do we have any callers for the non-agenda public comments?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. If I can ask my team to stop sharing their screen for a moment. Thank you. I do not see any hands raised, so we do not have any non-agenda public comments at this time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. This concludes the non-agenda public comment portion of the agenda. Now I'll ask if any of my fellow commissioners who are present, if you would like to make any comments. I don't see any hands raised or any comments, so we will now move on. And we will start with the interim president and CEO's report, and then we'll move on to the workshop probably. So Jeff Davis, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I do have a few agency updates to share with you this morning. First, a $7.5 million grant was awarded to the Housing Commission to support collaborative efforts to help more people of color become homeowners in the San Diego region. Chair Mitchell spoke for the Housing Commission at the news conference on September 21st to announce this grant. The news conference included Mayor Todd Gloria, City Council President Pro Tem Monica Montgomery Stepp, County of San Diego Supervisor Joel Anderson, Wells Fargo CFO Mike Santamusimo, and representatives from community organizations that make up the San Diego Homeownership Equity Collaborative. The San Diego City County Reinvestment Task Force will lead the implementation of the collaborative strategies through the San Diego region. The Housing Commission and Reinvestment Task Force are among the organizations on the collaborative's executive committee. The grant will support strategies to create 5,000 new homeowners of color in San Diego County by the end of 2025. The strategies include preparing a pipeline of eligible buyers of color by expanding programs such as debt reduction, credit repair, credit counseling, and homeownership navigation. Expanding the availability of down payment assistance and low-cost mortgage programs, expanding connections to trained and qualified professionals, and expanding research incentives and policy reforms to increase housing supply in San Diego. The grant is from Wells Fargo Wealth Opportunity Restored through Home Ownership or Worth Initiative. It's a $60 million national effort to address systemic barriers to homeownership for people of color. And San Diego is one of 8 markets across the country to receive a Worth grant. I want to acknowledge the Housing Commission staff for the Reinvestment Task Force, the grants team, and the Single Family Housing Finance staff for their outstanding work on this effort. At the board's last meeting, I let you know about the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials Conference, which occurred here in San Diego, September 22nd through the 24th. The evening before the conference started, NARO announced its National Awards of Merit honorees, and the Housing Commission received 3 awards of merit. Our accessory dwelling unit development pilot program received one of these awards. You'll recall that the Housing Commission built 5 ADUs in available yard space of single family homes that we own, and we rent those out as affordable housing now. Through this program, we also detailed key takeaways and lessons learned to provide information to help San Diego homeowners interested in building ADUs on their property. In addition, the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program received an award in the Community Revitalization category. And as you well know, we operated and administered this program to help pay rent and utilities for qualifying households with low income that experienced financial hardship due to the pandemic. We made payments totaling more than $218 million to help some 18,300 eligible households. In the administrative innovation category, we received an award for our online dashboards for homelessness programs and affordable housing. The Housing Commission created these comprehensive, interactive online dashboards to provide the public and policymakers with data on affordable housing and homelessness programs in the city. And our COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program and ADU Development Program are also being considered for NARO's Awards of Excellence. These awards are expected to be announced at a later date. Just for some additional perspective, only 18 initiatives nationwide received a NARO Award of Excellence when they were presented last year. So even being considered for these awards is an honor. And the honor reflects the leadership of this board and the outstanding work of our staff. On October 3rd, our Senior Vice President of Housing Finance and Property Management, Colin Miller, participated in the groundbreaking for Ventana El Sur development in San Ysidro. He joined Mayor Todd Gloria, the developers, MAC and Kingdom Development, and other organizations for this event. Ventana El Sur will provide 100 affordable rental apartments for seniors with low income. This board approved a $4.4 million loan to support the development, and the Housing Commission also awarded 25 rental housing vouchers to help pay rent for residents at this development who previously had experienced homelessness. And finally, as we're meeting this morning, the developers are breaking ground in Choya's View for the Tranquility at Post 310 development. This project will provide 42 affordable rental homes for veterans with very low income or those experiencing homelessness. The Housing Commission awarded 20 federal rental vouchers to help pay rent for Post 10 residents who previously had experienced homelessness. And this board also authorized a loan of $2.8 million for this development. Hitzke Development Corporation and Housing Innovation Partners are the developers for this property. And we certainly look forward to celebrating the grand openings of both Ventana El Sur and Tranquility at Post 310 when they're completed. And this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to say before we continue that I'm really extremely proud of the team at the Housing Commission. The award recognition at NARA was fantastic. What you and the team are doing there is truly exemplary and necessary. And it is always fun to see everybody working hard to try and achieve new heights. And so hats off to you and the entire team. It was a wonderful day. We had a full Housing Commission day that day. And I also want to commend you on the collaborative for the Worth Grant. It's rare that you see that many organizations come together with the same focus and purpose. And I think this is going to be a wonderful addition to the San Diego landscape. So thank you very much for all the work. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the Housing Commission's special meeting on September 16th and September 20th. Members of the public who wish to comment on the minutes should press *9 to raise their hands. No written public comments were submitted regarding the minutes. You know what? Do we have any, Scott Marshall, do we have any callers at this time?
No one has raised their hand at this time.
I think we can go ahead. We are missing some members for quorum. So Chuck, I'm going to ask for your guidance. We can either do this now or we can wait until Commissioner Benvenuto. I don't necessarily think we have to do it yet. So maybe we'll wait on this, and Scott, I'll re-ask that question because we have the consent agenda as well that we need to approve. So let's skip ahead and then come back and we will go to the workshop and begin that presentation. Jeff, if everyone is ready.
They are. We're ready to go.
Okay. Let's go ahead and start with the workshop. To the commission, to the commissioners. One of the things that we are continuing to watch is the landscape changing as more and more people are being forced to consider what their options are for housing in San Diego. It is a very difficult situation. We know that evictions are going to increase. We know that we have a housing supply issue, but more importantly, we have a housing affordability issue. And tied to housing affordability is this discussions about what the options are. And what I had talked to Jeff Davis and the team about is making sure that we're very clear about how the voucher system works, as it is going to grow, and the focus on the voucher system is going to increase aggressively over the next year in particular. And so we're going to have a workshop today to discuss the voucher program and give everybody, the public listening, some deeper insight into how it works and how much of a challenge it is as it relates to operating it. So with that, Jeff, I turn it over to you and the team.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. We are pleased to have the opportunity to provide the Housing Commission's project-based voucher rental assistance program. The overview will include information about the process for making project-based vouchers available, project requirements, and the competitive process for awarding these vouchers. Next slide, please. More than 17,000 households with low income in the city of San Diego were receiving Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Rental Assistance from the Housing Commission in June of this year. This represents 106% of our total voucher allocation. The voucher program assists some of the most vulnerable populations, with the average annual income for a voucher family being just under $20,000. And 63% of households being served are elderly or disabled. The demand for assistance far surpasses the vouchers we have available. The Section 8 waiting list consists of more than 128,000 families, and our project-based voucher waiting list has more than 74,000 families. Landlords are an important part of our voucher programs. In fiscal year 22, we dispersed over $215 million to close to 5,200 participating landlords on behalf of our voucher participants. Next slide, please. Project-based vouchers, or PBVs, are awarded to a housing development and are linked to a specific unit to help pay rent for families with low income or who experienced homelessness. When the tenant moves from the unit, the rental assistance voucher remains with the designated unit to assist another household. To date, the Housing Commission has committed close to 3,100 PBVs. Of those, 770 have been awarded to assist households with low income, and over 2,300 PBVs have been awarded to help households that experienced homelessness. This includes Veteran Affairs Supportive Housing, or VASH PBVs. PBVs are the component of the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. The Housing Commission is not allocated additional funding for PBV units. Instead, we use Section 8 tenant-based voucher funding to allocate project-based vouchers to affordable housing developments. On an annual basis, we conduct analysis to determine how many PBVs the Housing Commission can allocate each year. Factors such as funding availability, voucher utilization, demand for subsidized housing among at-risk populations, and loan and grant funding that is available for the creation of affordable housing are all considered when determining PBV allocations. Next slide, please. PBVs are awarded.
Before you go on, there are some components of this that I want to make sure that when you go back to the previous slide, that everybody understands, in particular the public watching and listening. You mentioned, first of all, PBVs are allocated from Section 8 tenant-based voucher funding. So there's a Section 8. There is a PBV, a project-based housing voucher. And you wanted to explain the difference, and because when you say PBVs are allocated from Section 8 tenant-based funding, voucher funding, I want to make sure people are clear about what you mean by that.
Sure. So HUD, we have an agreement with HUD for a baseline number of vouchers, to Section 8 vouchers that are tenant-based. So an applicant can receive a voucher, and then they can take it to the private rental market and find any available unit within the city of San Diego that they can rent, and the Housing Commission will subsidize that unit using the voucher. However, a project-based voucher is tied to a specific unit within a development. So the specific unit of development is subsidized. So when a person moves in, they're receiving assistance while they're living in that particular unit. So if that household moves out, that assistance stops and then is converted into assistance for a new family. When HUD provides the allocation and funding for our baseline of vouchers, it's typically for Section 8. However, housing authorities are allowed to carve out a portion of that funding or a portion of those vouchers to commit them to project-based vouchers.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Good explanation.
Thank you. Next slide, please. PBVs are awarded through a competitive process, specifically the Housing Commission's Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA, for capital funds and vouchers. The NOFA may include PBVs for low-income households or permanent supportive housing PBVs for low-income households that are experiencing homelessness. The PBV application undergoes a vigorous review and must pass multiple phases under the NOFA criteria and panel members. The development must meet several requirements to be considered for a PBV award. These include, but are not limited to, applicants who have demonstrated and documented experience successfully administering vouchers and/or affordable housing. Projects that can demonstrate significant need for the population selected for assistance at a development. This is to ensure that we are providing assistance to populations in greatest need and that the units can be utilized in a timely manner. We also review documentation to ensure other funding sources do not create unnecessary barriers to the referral, selection, or leasing plan. The number of PBVs requested in comparison to all units is also reviewed. Developments that create additional affordable housing units in addition to PBV units are more favorable. We also review the project design as it relates to the proposed population type and surrounding community. Accessibility to transit and community amenities is also required. Furthermore, developments that support the Housing Commission's poverty deconcentration efforts are also rated more favorably. Depending on the population to be served, a comprehensive service plan and budget may also be required to ensure long-term housing stability for the PBV residents. The financial structure and resources are also evaluated to verify that the project will successfully be completed by the construction or rehabilitation schedule. Additionally, we review the operating budget to confirm long-term financial sustainability that supports the voucher commitment term. Next slide, please. Additional requirements apply for permanent supportive housing PBVs. The permanent supportive housing model pairs rental assistance with wraparound supportive services to help high-need populations experiencing homelessness. The model sets forth additional requirements that the project owner must provide, including a housing first model for the permanent supportive housing PBV residents. This is an approach to quickly and successfully connect individuals and families experiencing homelessness to permanent housing without preconditions and barriers to entry, such as sobriety, treatment, or service participation requirements. Supportive services must be offered to maximize housing stability and prevent returns to homelessness, as opposed to addressing predetermined treatment goals prior to permanent and housing entry. The requirement for providing supportive services triggers additional documentation requirements to demonstrate a comprehensive service plan will be provided. Designated service providers are also required to enter and maintain client-level data in the current approved Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, as directed by the Regional Continuum of Care. The service providers must obtain and report required programmatic information and data on a monthly basis. And the property owners will be required to participate in the coordinated entry system as established by the San Diego Regional Continuum of Care for referrals for the PBV units. Next slide, please. An initial approval for PBVs through our competitive process includes additional contingencies before a PBV contract can be executed. The Housing Commission performs additional due diligence, and the PBV contract is executed only if the owner and the development comply with additional requirements. PBVs are subject to a subsidy layering review, or SLR. Subsidy layering reviews ensure that the amount of assistance that HUD provides is not more than the necessary amount to make the project feasible. The review considers all of the government assistance a development is receiving. Because available governmental assistance is limited, the subsidy layering review helps prevent excessive public assistance on one development. That could result when a development combines or layers the housing assistance payment subsidy from the project-based voucher program with other public assistance from federal, state, or local agencies. The assistance considered in this review also includes tax concessions or credits. All PBV properties must have an approved environmental review clearance before a housing assistance payment agreement can be executed. This analysis evaluates the impacts the project will have, including environmental, social, and economic aspects. If 9 or more PBVs are issued to a development that will undergo any type of construction or rehabilitation, the development is subject to the payment of federal prevailing wages under the Davis-Bacon Act. Financial performance at the time of solicitation must reflect payment of applicable prevailing wages to employees working on the project. The Housing Commission verifies compliance with labor standards before a PBV housing assistance payment contract is executed. Section 504 refers to a section of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 that protects qualified individuals from discrimination based on their disability. Section 504 applies to all PBV developments and sets the minimum percentage of units that must be accessible to individuals with disabilities and constructed multifamily housing developments. It requires 5% of PBV units to be fully accessible for people with mobility impairments and 2% of the units to be accessible for people with hearing or vision impairments. The Housing Commission collects documentation that certifies each PBV project complies with Section 504. Section 3 refers to a section of the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968. Under this section, federal funds invested in housing and community development are required to provide contracts, employment, training, and other economic opportunities to low and very low income people in the local jurisdiction. These people are referred to as Section 3 workers. Businesses that employ such people are referred to as Section 3 business concerns. Section 3 requires that, to the greatest extent feasible, businesses working on projects that receive certain financial assistance from HUD must make a good faith effort to train and hire Section 3 workers and contract with Section 3 business concerns. These Section 3 requirements apply to developments that receive PBVs. PBV units are also inspected to ensure they meet HUD's housing quality standards and provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing for the assisted family. PBV units must pass an inspection prior to the family moving in and biannually thereafter. Property owners must certify to and comply with additional PBV regulations, including HUD PBV regulations, the Housing Commission's Section 8 Administrative Plan, and the terms of the Housing Assistance Payment Contract. Emily will now share details about the Housing Commission's current NOFA and the additional screening our real estate division performs on PBV NOFA applications. Next slide, please.
So as noted previously, we award capital funds and vouchers through our annual Competitive Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA. This year's NOFA opened at the end of August and closes at the end of October. Funding decisions are anticipated in January of 2023 in time for state funding application rounds. We have 2 available funding tracks for this NOFA. Our permanent supportive housing NOFA includes $13 million in capital funds and 100 project-based vouchers. And our affordable housing NOFA makes 100 project-based vouchers available. Next slide. The multifamily housing finance team within the real estate division reviews each project for feasibility and reasonableness. Either with or without capital, we do this review. Staff reviews the pro forma to determine if the financing plan is achievable and if the development actually needs less resources from the Housing Commission than the developer is requesting. Our review includes, but is not limited to, the sources and uses of funds, the overall development budget, estimated operating assumptions, cash flow projections, and to ensure the maximum leverage of the Housing Commission subsidy. Staff reviews cost assumptions with the developer to determine unique site features that may drive cost estimates. We also inquire about other funding opportunities that the developer may qualify for at the state level and discuss source competitiveness. Staff also reviews the developer's capacity. This includes a third-party review of gap financing resource needs compared to what the developer is requesting, the developer's performance track record, and whether or not they are in good standing with other Housing Commission loans and with our compliance monitoring unit. We also do an initial environmental review and assessment to determine if National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, clearance is required, and then we initiate that process. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides provide examples of developments competitively awarded a Housing Commission loan and project-based vouchers through the NOFA. St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa on the slide here consists of 403 affordable rental housing units in the East Village community. Of these, 270 units are set aside for people who experienced homelessness, and 133 are for people with low income. Through our fiscal year 2020 NOFA, the Housing Commission awarded $11.5 million in a loan to the development and 270 project-based vouchers to help pay rent for residents who previously experienced homelessness. 16 of the project-based vouchers are for Veteran Affairs Supportive Housing, or VASH, vouchers specifically for veterans who experienced homelessness. Additionally, the Housing Commission authorized the issuance of $115 million in multifamily housing revenue bonds for this development. The project completed construction in January of this year. Next slide, please. The Tizon Apartments development is an example of a project competitively awarded a loan and vouchers through our traditional affordable housing NOFA in fiscal year 2021. Tizon is the rehabilitation of a former hotel in Rancho Bernardo to create 175 affordable housing units for seniors. The Housing Commission awarded a $4.5 million loan and 44 project-based housing vouchers for seniors with very low income who are experiencing homelessness. Additionally, the Housing Commission authorized the issuance of nearly $25 million in multifamily housing revenue bonds for this development. Tizon is expected to complete construction in March of 2023. Next slide. That concludes our presentation, and staff is available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Emily. I always find the education sections of our agenda really fascinating. Vouchers are complex. I think that's a fair statement. And so let's go to questions, and then I have a few that I'll ask at the end. But Vice Chair Klumpner, Commissioner Hester, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, although I know that we have time constraints on quorum this morning, and so I'm scanning to see when we have quorum. I know that getting our business done is kind of the highest priority, so stop me at any point in my questions if we're ready to vote, start moving on voting on things. My main question, so thank you so much for, I think this is really important both for us and for members of the public, and to have this be a resource as an explainer. My main question has to do with how we think of the limited pool that we are dealing with here as it relates to affordable housing in general. And by affordable housing, I'm going to define it in this case as deed restricted units. So one, I don't know off the top of my head, I know this is uncommon, but how often do we see deed restricted units that do not utilize vouchers? What kind of percentage of that in terms of new production coming online, meaning that there's an internal subsidy happening within the project that they don't need to do that? And then second, related to that, when that does occur, if I understand correctly, the Housing Commission still does the monitoring and compliance to make sure that the affordability is being maintained in those units. And so yeah, we'll start there.
So Susanna, if you're okay, I'll take the first part of that question, and then perhaps you can speak to the voucher and compliance piece of it. But what we see quite candidly in recent years, largely driven by policy and need around housing, the unhoused, is we do see a great demand constraint on the voucher to sort of make the capital stack work. We do also see what I would call 80-20 deals where you don't need that. Some of the family deals that would have larger units, which would drive additional revenue, would make the capital stack work, so you wouldn't see it there. I think we have seen it a lot in the last 5 to 7 years, again, largely driven by our need to house the unhoused.
Got it. And so the examples you're giving there, I'm guessing that those are projects that kind of fall into like complete communities or density bonus projects where there's something else driving the inclusion of on-site affordable units, and therefore they're not utilizing these limited resources in the same way. Is that Am I understanding that correctly? Those are the policy changes you're.
Yeah,
examples of them.
correct. So you would see, market rate coupled with affordable. So the market would sort of be able to take on, the subsidization of the affordable. Or you'll see straight traditional affordable, which again, we have not seen a lot of in recent years based on the needs of our city. We would see a lot of voucher need for the unhoused. So.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. And my observation here that I want to kind of make for anybody watching this and for us to think about is that one of the real challenges in dealing with the homelessness and sheltering the unhoused in housing, putting aside kind of the shelter components, is the limited pool of vouchers available and how central those vouchers are to housing people who are unhoused. And to the extent that affordable housing can be generated that is not utilizing those limited resources, I think it's important for us to think about that as additive to the holistic approach that we're dealing with affordable housing, and that it is actually freeing up those resources to be focused more heavily on what we're all most concerned about, which is the unhoused population. And so I just think that's an element of this that kind of gets lost in some of the land use discussions. I'm certainly not saying in these meetings or with this staff, but I think when you look at what happens with other redevelopment projects, the way that other policies are described, that we as a community and policymakers ought to be thinking about encouraging affordable housing that does not need or utilize vouchers, because every one of those units that gets created that isn't utilizing a voucher is freeing it up to be used for a more dire circumstance, and at the same time is housing somebody who is looking for an affordability level that is unavailable in the market. And those are two huge goals. So I think that the policy discussion gets overly kind of stuck on, for example, the percentage on site, and the percentage on site doesn't necessarily tell us whether those are additive or we're just, shifting things from kind of one place to another, one project to another. We need to be thinking in terms of how to get additive affordable housing and prioritizing our vouchers for those with the greatest need. So that's sort of my general comment on this. And thank you so much for explaining all this. I'm glad that we have an opportunity to put this all in public. This is incredibly complicated. Huge props to everybody that lives and breathes this and knows all the details of all of this compliance issues and this entire process. It is a phenomenally complex area of expertise, and thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Emily and Susanna, for your presentation. I have no questions.
Chair, I just wanted to let you know that I received a text from Commissioner Benvenuto that she'll be joining us momentarily.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll go ahead and ask my questions and then we'll go back to the main agenda. Pardon me. So Emily, I guess what I would ask of the team, you and Susanna, great presentation. And again, I'll repeat it. This is complex, but this is so important for this moment that we're going through in San Diego. And I know that I speak for, Commissioner Hester and Vice Chair Klumner. What we have to try and provide is clarity, because clarity is really going to be tied to hope. I think you have a lot of people who want to know that if they need a voucher. They don't necessarily, it's not a permanent supportive housing component. It's a voucher because it's an affordability issue. And my request of the team would be that you guys do a great job of providing us with a diagram of what's in stock that the Housing Commission has approved on overall. Can we get a separate sheet going forward that is truly focused on the voucher situation? And one of the reasons why I think that's important is, again, it's hard to have hope when the waiting list is 12 years, and that's something we need to consider. I think Vice Chair Klumner would agree, and Commissioner Hester, we have to also be hopeful and be more aggressive in trying to pursue more vouchers. I think it is imperative that HUD realize that the market here is different than markets in other places. And again, the more vouchers we can provide, the better. but also the more development that we can get that is, I guess I'd say affordable, Emily. I think it's hard. I know today we are discussing, we're having discussions with the affordable housing developers about how to try and accelerate construction and building of affordable housing. But I think this discussion is so important. On Emily, on one of the slides, there was a mention of I was on slide 4. And there were a couple of things that stood out on this discussion. And you know, when you think about on slide 4, you go to slide 4. When you think about it, I get the VASH. Go to the next slide, please. The supports our poverty deconcentration efforts. I think that's an interesting statement. You know, I know that we've made a commitment that we're trying to find locations of properties that are close to transit and services and amenities. I think that's incredibly, it's essential and vital. But when you talk about the deconcentration efforts, we've had this conversation. We want to put people in all neighborhoods, right? We want to make sure that we're not just concentrating voucher recipients in one neighborhood or one zip code. And can you expand a little bit on that, because I do think that's important.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to let Azucena pick that question up.
Sure. So since 2010, we've had a upward mobility or poverty deconcentration MTW initiative. So in our notice of funding availability, we do give bonus points to developments that are constructed in areas that are concentrated with low poverty rates. So it's part of our Choice Communities initiative. So any developments that are constructed in what we consider to be our enterprise or choice communities, which is typically higher opportunity areas that are closer to transit, education, and employment opportunities, where rental costs are typically more expensive. We tend to give bonus points for areas that are constructed outside of high poverty areas and within our Choice Communities initiative.
Yeah, I think it's a very important statement. I appreciate that explanation, and for the public to hear, is that it's not just about providing housing in one area. It's we're trying to spread housing around, housing opportunity around, and for the development community, I know that you understand that loud and clear, the importance of that, because that, you know, these there are communities that can provide better support of the structure, and you know, we realize that and want to incentivize that. So, okay. You know, other than that, I think, like I said, what I would ask Susanna and Emily is we can create a specific sheet to the voucher aspect, the breakdown, you know, because I do think what we have to think about is, we know we have a little over 17,000 vouchers now. What would we love to have in a perfect world, right? And when in the very beginning of your presentation, you showed the waiting list, 12 years, and you showed the number of people on the waiting list. That's really hard to see, but our commitment as a commission is that we try and provide as many opportunities as we can to house people. But part of that will also, you know, depend on if we can get more vouchers from HUD. So.
Sure. I'm happy to put together sort of a summary of the voucher allocations and utilization by program type for you moving forward. We'll work with Jeff and our communications team, and we can possibly add that into like some of the monthly disbursements of reports that we issue.
I'd love that in the monthly at a glance report. That would be wonderful. All right. Seeing no further questions, we will go back to the beginning of the agenda. I believe that is Commissioner Benvenuto on now.
I don't see her, and sometimes we'll have agenda items that can be pushed to the next agenda or next board meeting. That's not the case for these two.
Yep. So let me let's see if we can if we can vote on the minutes of the last meeting. Let me see here. Let's see. bear with us for a minute. Let me see if we can, because we may be able to do the minutes, Jeff, and then we'll go to the consent agenda, but let me see if Commissioner Benvenuto is joining.
I hate to do this to you, Chair, but I have hard stop today.
Yeah, I understand, no problem. We will have you out of here by 10. Let's go ahead and take care of the items that we can, and I think we can have hopefully Commissioner Benvenuto join up for the agenda items. Let's go with the motion on the minutes. Do any of the commissioners present have any changes to the minutes of the meetings of September 16th and September 20th? If not, I will ask for a motion
So
on the
moved.
minutes. Motion by Vice Chair Klempner. I have a second. Second by Commissioner Hester. And I will call your name, so your vote. Vice Chair Klempner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
And let the record show that Commissioner Benvenuto, Commissioner Hubbard, and Commissioner Vasquez are not present. I will add my aye vote. And that gives us 3 votes. So we will need to wait and see.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Just for the purposes of the record, there were no one raised their hand to provide public comments on the minutes of the workshop.
Thank you very much, Scott. Okay, so then the only other thing we have is the consent agenda, which we will vote on today. This morning, I'm proposing that the item 100 be approved on the consent agenda. This is the lease approval for the nonprofits Latinos and Latinas at Courtyard Apartments, the phenomenal program. Members of the public who wish to speak on this item should press *9 to raise their hands right now, and no written public comments were submitted regarding item 100. Do we have any callers at this time, Scott, for item 100?
There are no hands raised, so no, there are no public comments. Thank you.
All right, this concludes the public comment period for item 100. Commissioners, do you have any comments on this item, or if not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Klempner, second by Commissioner Hester. All right, for the record, I will ask each of you to say your vote on the motion. Vice Chair Klempner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
And I will add my aye vote and let the record show that Commissioner Benvenuto, Commissioner Hubbard, and Commissioner Vasquez are absent from the vote, and we'll need to add on later. And we will, Commissioner Hester, I know you have a hard stop at 10. We have 2 items on the agenda. And what I would ask the team to do is, let's go item 101 and move quickly through this. Item 101 is the loan recommendation, preliminary bond authorization, and tax equity, fiscal responsibility.
Question, Chair, given the situation that we're in right now and hopefully having quorum before 10, and that we all had the materials yesterday, would it be possible for us to start the public comment and either do an abbreviated or skip the staff presentations or come back to them after we've voted?
Yep. I'm fine with
I just
that.
want to know for the public, we've all had these and read them, so we're not voting without knowing.
Yeah, I would concur with you 100%. So I'm fine with expediting this. I would ask Jeff, is there anything that the staff would like to note on item 101? On item 101 that is of importance to raise in the public space right now.
I do see that we have Commissioner Benvenuto with us, and as I mentioned, we do need votes on both of these in order for deadlines.
So let's we have 8 minutes, Jeff. So if we can expedite on 101, is there anybody that wants to make any highlights on this, since we've all had an opportunity to read the backup materials?
So I can, I'm Jennifer Kreuter, the Vice President of Multifamily Housing Finance. I can give a quick, brief overview.
Okay.
So the first item is the 13th and Broadway, and the developer is Chelsea. It's an $8 million loan. and there's preliminary bond inducement approvals needed for $73 million. And then, so the address is 1320 Broadway in downtown San Diego. The closest trolley stops and bus stops are both 0.1 miles away. They're very transit oriented. There's 115 project-based vouchers. 65 of them are for PSH individuals, 10 are for PSH FASH, and 40 are non-PSH. So the Alpha is the service provider along with the Veterans Affairs, and it's going to be made up of studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, between 25 to 50% AMI levels. And just a quick timeline, they're looking to apply for bonds round 1 of next year. So it'll probably be January, February timeframe, whenever Select comes out with their schedule. And then if they're awarded, then we'll come back in like probably fall 2023 timeframe for approvals for final bond authorization, and they will hopefully close by the end of calendar year next year.
Wonderful, Jennifer, excellent job. All right, we will now take public comments from callers on this item. Scott, do we have any public callers or comments who have comments on this item?
We do not have any callers. Thank you.
All right, this concludes the public comment period for item 101. Commissioners, are there any further questions or comments on this item?
Move to approve.
Okay, motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Hester. I will now call the names to confirm your votes. Vice Chair Klumpner,
Aye.
Commissioner Benvenuto,
Aye.
Commissioner Hester,
Aye.
and Commissioner Hubbard and Commissioner Vasquez are still absent. So, and I will add my aye vote. So the motion carries with a vote of 4-0. All right, item 102.
So this item 102 is the approval for final bond authorization for Community Housing Works' Cortisol Apartments. This is also located in the downtown neighborhood. It's in Cortez Hill neighborhood specifically. It's located at 915 Beach Street. And yet again, it's the same type of thing with the transit is very close. The trolley line is a half a mile away. A bus stop is 0.2 miles away. The bond issuance is $19,305,000 plus for tax exempt bonds plus $13 million in taxable bonds is what we're asking for approvals to issue today. In July 2021, we came forward for approvals for a $5 million loan. Then they applied through our fiscal year 21 NOFA and received approvals back in July of last year. They have 87 project-based vouchers awarded through that same NOFA. 14 of them are PSH and 73 are non-PSH. The People Assisting the Homeless PATH, they're going to be the service providers for the project. Has 87, like I said, 87 affordable units, 1 manager unit. 79 will be 1-bedroom units plus 8 2-bedroom units, and the AMI levels will range from 30 to 40%. So for a quick timeline, they're actually right now we're in the process of closing the loan and issuing the bonds. And so if approved, we'll go to Housing Authority for approval in mid-November. So it's November 15th. And then they are anticipating to close construction financing in early December with construction starting shortly thereafter and then completing construction by October 2024.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. Excellent job again. We'll now take public comments after this presentation. There were no written public comments submitted. Scott Marshall, are there any hands or anybody here from the public who wishes to make a comment on this item?
We do not have any commenters. Thank you.
All right, this concludes the public comment period for item 102. Commissioners, any questions?
Move to approve.
Motion by Vice Chair Klumpner. Second by Commissioner Hester. All right, I will now call the roll. As I say your name, please state your vote on the motion. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Commissioner Benvenuto.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
And I will have my aye vote in favor, and the motion carries with a vote of 4-0. And Commissioner Hester, I think we are going to allow you to meet your time frame. And,
thank you so much.
And Commissioner Benvenuto, I want to commend you on your background. It is phenomenal. The waves and stripes that it adds some flair to the meeting. So that concludes all the items for our agenda this morning.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, can you go back and get a Commissioner Benvenuto's vote on
consent agenda and the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Benvenuto, we have at this point 3 votes in favor of the minutes from the meetings of the 16th and the 20th. How would you like to register your vote?
Aye on both. Thank you.
Okay. And Commissioner Benvenuto, we also had a motion on the consent agenda that right now is 3-0, and that was on the lease for Latinas, but for the lease approval on Latinos and Latinas at the Courtyard Apartments. How would you like to register your vote?
Aye.
Aye on that for the consent agenda. So Chuck, I think that both motions will now carry 4-0.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chuck, for that reminder. All right. With that, we have reached the conclusion of today's agenda. And Commissioner Hester, I know that you have a hard stop at 10, so I want to say thank you very much for your patience and for helping us get through this. And I want to remind everyone that, again, Jeff, I want to, applaud the staff for the reports today. I want to applaud the staff for the work that you're doing. We are at a very important time period here in San Diego with all that's coming at us with the slowing down of the economy and the need for housing, more housing to be established. So I want to commend everybody for your work and your efforts, and thank you. Remind everybody to remember to stay safe out there and have a good rest of your day. And we will conclude this meeting at 9:59 a.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, so much.